This next video clip we will call training the tree. Training involves making the basic shape of the tree, the basic scaffold of the tree. Earlier video clips were site selection and then planting and staking the tree. Sorry if I'm repeating myself with some of what I said earlier in those other ones, but they're so boring I can't face watching them. If you've just bought a 1-year-old tree, you may have bought a maiden tree, which is this thing here, from the nursery, or you may have got a shortened version, like this thing here, come obviously without the pot, come through the post. The first thing you do, obviously you plant the tree in the right way in the right place. Then the next thing you do is decide how long you want the trunk of the tree to be. The trunk being the bare bit, and then it starts to branch out. A bush tree has a trunk of about 2.5 feet. That's obviously from the ground, which would be about here, which would be often what you'd have in a garden situation. And in the old days, if you had a trunk, say with this thing here, cut at 4.5 feet, that would be called a half standard tree. And in the old days, you could have your sheep running underneath it. In a modern day equivalent, you might want a half standard tree in your garden so that you can get your lawn mower underneath it easily. If we let this grow and cut it at 6 foot, you see where I'm cutting this, Sarah?
6 foot?
Yeah, if we cut it at about 6 foot, we would then, so we've got a 6 foot trunk, then the branches, we would call that tree a standard tree.
Right.
Bush, half standard and standard simply refers to how long the trunk is. And in the olden days with a standard tree, you could put your moo cows to graze underneath it like they would down in Devon.
Modern day equivalent sit-on lawnmower.
A modern day equivalent, the sit-on lawnmower. Thank you for that. Bearing in mind, of course, whilst you can ride your lawnmower and stuff underneath it and so on and so forth, the longer the trunk, the more of nothing you have. The more you have to climb to pick your fruit and generally mess about with the tree. So, if through the post you've got your tree cut back to 4.5 foot because that's all the post office will allow. If you wanted a standard tree or just simply a longer trunk, you would let the top bud grow up a cane. It would tend to grow out. Put a cane up it, make that grow up, and then cut it where you want it. Then it will branch, and obviously stopping the side branches branch. This tree here, let's say in this instance, we'll say this tree has been cut. This tree has been cut to the length that we want. When we cut the top off, like here, we have removed that apical bud, the bud at the top of the young maiden tree. That bud was sending hormones down the trunk that were stopping these buds from developing, stopping these buds from turning into branches. Now we've removed it, these branches, there are no hormones coming down, and these will start to break. This one here, let's say this is a bush tree. We've cut that off, or we've received it cut off, and we think this length is fine. These lower branches now will tend to break. The problem is that the top bud will often decide it wants to be a trunk again, would like to be a nice big tree, and you will get this situation. This is a 2-year-old tree now, isn't it? The top bud, yeah, has become much more dominant. The lower buds that are broken are quite small, and it's resulted in a lopsided tree. We've got 3 nicely spaced branches because we want 3, 4 or 5 nicely spaced branches, but this top one has become dominant. So to avoid this, on either of these situations, in March, just as the sap starts to rise, we get our little knives and we notch underneath. Can you see that all right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I can only think. I haven't got my glasses. We've cut through the rind, and it's, remember all that stuff at school, the phloem and the xylem and all that business? We've cut through, that's in the rind. We've removed it, we've cut through to the bone instead of wood. So when the sap comes up here, this branch has now been deprived of sap. This branch won't grow very strongly. This is called notching. Conversely, with the undeveloped branch here, the lower one, if we do our cut above it, and this is called nicking, we remove the wood. When the sap comes up here, it can't get past this cut. So this lower branch
Forced out that way.
is what?
Forced out that way.
Forced out that way. This branch will get extra sap. This one's getting less, this one's getting more, this middling one stays the same. So now these 3 should grow. This one should catch up with these 2, and it should make a balanced tree with 3 nice branches. So if we get our maiden tree through the post, or we've cut our maiden tree back like this one, if before anything's happened in March, if we notch underneath, the top one, let these couple grow, and then nick above the bottom one, we will get, that will get less sap, that will get more sap, so we will get, hopefully get 4 branches about the same vigour, so they will get a nice balanced head. That will give us the next year, hopefully, something like this. These are 3 nice balanced branches. This one, it never worked, or I forgot to do it. So if we want a 4th one, because it's filling that space in there, if we notch that one now in March, it will give this weak limb extra sap. This tree here, when it opens up, we will call a open-centred bush. It will give us a goblet-shaped tree, an open-centred tree, so that air and the light can get into the canopy. It will be an open canopy like a goblet. The air and light can get in, therefore increasing our photosynthesis, therefore making more sugars, better quality fruits. The only problem with this tree, the, what do I call it? Open-centred bush,
yeah,
is that when these branches thicken up, and more importantly, when the bark thickens up, you will get lots of occluded bark, but thick bark stuck in all these crutch angles. And they're all, when it gets a big tree, when the branches are like this, they will, in effect, all radiate out from the same spot. Lots of occluded bark. Bark has no structural strength. So if you have this open-centred bush, it's a good shape for getting light in, but because you're getting this occluded bark stuck in these crutch angles, there's a chance that limbs can break off, especially in the future, let's say, when your kids have got a swing on the tree and there's a lot of weight, or there's a fruit load or there's a snow load.
What do you do about that then?
What do you do about that then? Good question, Sarah. What you would do would be to encourage a tree like this one here. With this one, we've got lots of branches to choose from. If we increase the gap, the internode between these branches, we don't get the occluded bark like we do here. If we had the branches coming up, we can still have our open centered bush shape, but the branches are delayed, and this would be called a delayed open centered bush. So if we, shall we say, got rid of that one and got rid of that one, how many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, half a dozen. Got rid of that one. Then we notched under here to reduce the vigour of that top one, and we nicked these couple of lower ones.
So you want them all coming out at different angles?
Coming out at different angles of 4 or 5, 3, 4 or 5, coming out at different angles, but then get them all to grow up together to make our goblet shape, but originating from the trunk in a delayed fashion, because this is a delayed open centered bush. This is a much better tree. Things like this are what I grow and everybody else does for garden centres, because the open centered bush is what people expect. The delayed open centered bush is
It's actually a healthier
better.
tree long term.
A better tree in the long run, yeah. So that was training. That was getting the tree to its building up the scaffold, getting the initial shape of the tree. That's it. Thanks, Sarah.